Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All-Iowa podcast. We're your hosts, Keith and JD. Here for week number 2 of the regular season. Another disappointing week 2 for us. But first, let's talk about this question of the week from last week. Last week we asked, when was the last time Iowa put up over 500 yards of total offense? And bonus points if you could tell us who it was and how many they had. And we did hit some people that answered the question correctly. You didn't get all the bonus points, but we're pretty close. 2019 against Middle Tennessee, the Blue Raiders, we had 644 yards in a 48-3 win. You'd think with 644 yards, you'd probably have more than 48 points typically, but I think, if I remember right, there was might have been a long, like 90 to 95 yard drive in there somewhere too. So that kind of inflates that just a little bit maybe, but you got to drive the field and you got to score. So
was that a Petrus year?
No, that was Nate Stanley's final year.
Okay, Nate Stanley. I didn't know when. I couldn't remember when Petrus started. If it was 2020 or if it was 19.
Yeah, 2020 was Petrus's first year.
Yep. Yeah, it all just kind of jumbles in my head.
Well, 2019 was also the year. I remember Nate Stanley because that's the year we beat USC in the Holiday Bowl. That was because of the yeah, that's the one. And then because of COVID, we didn't have a Holiday Bowl in 2020, so we were the Holiday Bowl champs for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's something to hang your hat on, I guess.
We won a bowl game since.
Yeah, beat Kentucky in 2022.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did. We did. Yeah, with who was the quarterback?
Gene and Xavier Wampa intercepting 2 passes.
Right. But wasn't Joey Labus, was it? Who was? Wasn't
yes,
Joey?
it actually
it was Joey Labus. Yeah.
Yep. And he transferred out
and tearing it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see how. Was it Central Michigan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't look to see either.
Yesterday.
To be honest, after yesterday, anytime Iowa loses, it just ruins me for the rest of the night. I don't want to watch football. I don't want to do anything other than just sit and reflect on what we could have done differently, what we could have done. And I know I'm not a player and I don't have any input whatsoever on this whole deal. And I get that. But I run through all the plays in my head and I'm thinking to myself, what mistakes did we make that cost us ultimately the game? And I was thinking last night, and we can go through this, the 5 yards on the delay of game, if we'd have kicked it, let's say we kicked it to exactly the same place that we would have kicked it, but with 5 yards. So they would have started, instead of the 22 at the end of the game, they would have started at the 17, Iowa State. Or they may have not fielded it. It might have rolled a little bit further, but we'll just assume that they did field it just like they did. But let's say we get the extra 5 yards that we had on the penalty. Now they start from the 17. Let's say they get the 42 yards that they got in the game. Now it's a 59-yard field goal, not a 54.
Based on that kick, it would have been good
from
59.
Yeah, he might have. But it would have, but maybe that would have put a little more into his head, thinking, I really got to get into this because that's 59 yards. And he might have pushed himself a little too far. And then another question that I guess I could have asked, and I really didn't think too much of it at the time, but I kind of thought about it later. Does Kirk not think about maybe calling a timeout to ice the kicker? We didn't do that either. We had a timeout left.
You had actually 2, I think, didn't we?
Oh, might even had 2. Yeah. Why wouldn't you just getting ready? I mean, there's positives and negatives to that. Positives is you give the kid a little more time to think about it or go through the motion in his head. And the negative is that for them that maybe it gets into his head and he misses it. Mm-hmm. You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. He's done it before. He didn't do it this time. I was kind of surprised he didn't do it. And, I don't know. We can let's dive into things here. Let's talk
Let's
about that.
kind of do a reset. Iowa State beat Iowa 20-19 for those that aren't familiar. And they beat Iowa on a 54-yard field goal with no time. Well, basically 6 seconds left.
Yeah.
So, Iowa led the entire game until the last 6 seconds. And it was awful hard to watch, especially the second half. So now that you're caught up, we're going to go ahead and dive into the game in its whatever you want to call it, I guess.
So let's look at the positives first.
Okay.
Caleb Johnson.
Yes.
Almost 200 yards rushing. Kind of a wasted game, when you think about it that way. But it's just like you always talk about feeding a hot hand, and I realize guys have to go out to take a little bit of a breather, but a play or two tops, you don't leave them out for the rest of the series, 3, 4, 5 plays. And I get that you've got other capable quality backs, but when that guy is basically running right through them like they were Swiss cheese, get him back in there. And we seem to go away from that when he'd get hot. He'd have break off a long run. You'd take him out for 4 or 5 plays. Well, if he's not in game condition, something's wrong. If you can't take a play or two off and then go back in, I don't know. I've never seen that before. I mean, I've seen it before, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Other positives, the first quarter.
The kicking was great. 2 field goals, right down the middle.
Yeah, and I thought the punting was a little less than stellar, a little less than what I was expecting. But
he still averaged
second
40.
game. Yeah, still, and it's the second game.
Yeah.
Defense played really good, barring about 2 plays, maybe 3.
Yeah.
The other positives, I'd say, especially in the Iowa State's positive favor, was they had their Big 12 officials there. So they could basically push off, hold, do whatever they wanted. Nothing was getting called, but not to complain because it was being called that way both ways. Yeah. So, it's just, I've never seen a guy, quote, get bumped off his route like that with the ball in the air, trying to make his break and not have a pass interference called.
Or at least a hold.
Yeah, there's got to be something. The ball was in the air. The guy's making his break, and the defensive guy basically pushes him, runs into him. You've got to give him the room at that point. That's pass interference. I don't care how you look at it. Again, that was on a 3rd down. That would have been an automatic first down. That would have taken more time off the clock, would have given them less time. That could have been a huge possession. What else did we say could we say it was positive?
Well, I don't know what's positive.
North end zone crowd.
Yeah, North end zone crowd was positive. Iowa State had a lot of trouble getting plays, and they had some false starts and snap infractions in the first half, especially the first quarter, where they were just going backwards. So that was good. That was in the north end zone.
Punt coverage was good on those the first couple quarters, getting down there and downing the ball inside the 5 a couple of times, or inside the 10.
Well, actually, Cade McNamara in the first half wasn't doing too bad. He really fell off in the second half. He couldn't find his rear end with both hands.
Well, I've got a theory on that too.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, if we have any more positives, let's get those out of the way. But there's a lot of things that we can talk about that aren't positives.
Yeah. 1 sack in the entire game. That's a positive. That's better than it has been in years past. But
on defense, we only had 1.
Yeah, we weren't getting pressure on defense like we should have. We had some we had some times where we flushed him out of the pocket, and he's got good enough feet to get away from that. So yeah, I give that. I almost call those, the pressures are almost pressure sacks that don't result in lost yardage. Let's say it's just a loss of down, so to speak. So I mean, I'll give him that, because we did have a few of those, and rushing defense was pretty solid.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of 8-9 yard runs, but other than that, it was, they would have been good as a Big Ten team, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, because that's about all they were going to get.
Right.
A lot of times they weren't even getting that, and I thought for the most part, outside of a couple of blown plays, the defensive backs played well enough. But not well enough to win, I guess.
Well, I guess let's get into the negatives, because there's
okay. Well, I got one more positive,
okay.
And I know I'll probably get eviscerated for this. The season's not over.
No,
and this loss, in the grand scheme of things, outside of potential playoff implications, doesn't mean anything, because you've still got the Big Ten schedule ahead. You take care of the Big Ten schedule, that loss doesn't really matter as much. Now, granted, yeah, you've got to play Ohio State, and you've got to go to the shoe to do it, and the odds of winning that are slim. Not impossible, but slim. So you got your work cut out for you, but you can still make the playoffs. And we talked about it, 10-2, even if they're not, let's say they're 10-2, their only loss now is to Ohio State, and you've got 4 teams that end up with 1 loss in the conference. I don't think Michigan's going to be in that boat anymore after watching them yesterday, or Texas is just that good. But let's just say, tiebreaker situation, Iowa finishes 8-1 in the conference, just hypothetically speaking, 10-2 overall, but they're not in the title game because of tiebreakers. Okay, that's Ohio State and
Penn State or
Oregon or Penn State or whoever.
Right.
And a 10-2 Iowa is probably pretty attractive in a 12-team playoff. I think you actually, if let's say it's a 10-2 Penn State, that let's say Penn State loses and gets into the championship game somehow or whatever, and they finish 10-3, Ohio State goes 13-0, whatever. Would you put Iowa in at 10-2 over a Penn State that's 10-3?
I would, but I'm not making that decision.
Yeah. Again, that's a positive. Is the season is not over. I've seen a lot of people who have hung their heads. The season's over. Shoot me now. If your life depends on the fact that they lost a game, you probably need to reevaluate yourself, because the quicker you can get over the fact that your life shouldn't hinge on the result of one game, the better and the happier you're going to be. The sun came out today. Guys are back in the building. They're going to get it figured out. If anybody's going to get it figured out, this team will get it figured out, especially for the defensive side. So, long way to go. If you took one game or one stretch of games, if you're a baseball player or a baseball fan like me, one stretch of games, the New York Mets would have been out of it a long, long, long time ago when they were 11 games under 500 in June. And then all of a sudden now they're 13 over and they're in the wild card hunt. So season's not over. You just got to keep plugging away. So that is a positive. So, but yeah, let's dive into the negatives. There's plenty of those.
Okay. I'm going to go on a broad negative.
Okay.
When was the last time Iowa defense gave up 20 points and a half that the offense didn't set up the opposing offense inside the 20-yard line at least once or twice?
You have to go back a long ways.
You have to go back a long ways because you can't. The defense can't blame the offense for leaving the ball on the 20-yard line and going in. So they had a 75-yard play, a drive. I think it was 8 plays, 75 yards. They ran down and scored on Iowa. Fine, it happens. You're not perfect, but you don't turn around on series later and allow a 75-yard play, one play. 75 yards for a touchdown. I don't know what was going on.
Especially after you had just taken the momentum back by driving down the field and scoring on them and
exactly.
taking your that's where the whole debate of whether you go for 2, you kick the extra point, whatever.
That's another one we're going to talk about. So the defense can't sit there and say it wasn't our fault. The offense did it. Well, you can't give up when you're talking about an all-time Iowa defense, an elite all-time Iowa defense, a top 10, arguably, maybe even a top 7 or 8 defense in all of college football. And they give up 20 points in a half to Iowa State. There's something not right there. Okay, now I'm not blaming the defense for losing the game, obviously. The offense didn't score much. They scored 6 points in the second half total. Can't have that either. So there's blame there too. We'll talk about disappointments. Here's another disappointment. Here's something that probably nobody really ever thinks about. Iowa had the ball, driving at the end of the game, not really driving, but trying to eat clock, trying to make first downs to keep the ball away from Iowa State. They had a third down, and I don't remember if it was 4, 5, or 6 yards. It was right in there. I have to go back and look. Third and 8. Okay. They've already ran the ball twice. Iowa State knew they were going to run the ball twice. Third down, what do? They do a Brian Ferentz, a 2022-23. They run right back into the teeth of the defense again. Why wouldn't you, knowing that they are keying on the run, do a little play action, flip to the tight end for 8 or 9 yards, get the first down, end the game?
Mm-hmm.
But no, we have to think we're better than everybody else and try to run into the teeth of the defense, and because we're going to run the game out and rely on our defense to stop them. Guess what? Didn't happen, and you lost. Why don't you, instead of trying to, and I don't want to get all upset and worked up here because this is the way it is. Instead of trying to not lose the game, why don't you try to go out and just actually win it? Try hard.
Think back to this game here, 2010. Insight Bowl against Missouri. Iowa was facing a 3rd down and 3 towards the end of the game. Got a 27-24 lead. There's probably about 35, 40 seconds left on the clock. They've run the ball twice into the teeth of the defense. 3rd down comes up. Missouri's out of timeouts, all that stuff. Same situation, basically. And they're right around midfield at this point. What does Iowa do? They run a play-action waggle with the quarterback rolls out, hits the tight end runs it all the way down, gets tackled at the 1-yard line. Still debating whether he actually got tackled at the 1 or if he made it in. It's hard to tell. Iowa wins the game because they take a knee on the next play and the game's over. That's exactly what I was thinking in that situation. Was you've got an All-American tight end. You know, the worst case scenario, you give them a minute with no timeouts. Okay. They didn't even need a minute to beat you. So now now maybe they've gone down and kicked their field goal. Now you've got 20 seconds left and you were set up at the midfield instead of having to take one Hail Mary. You could have taken 2 sideline passes, got into field goal range and kicked a field goal. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of things that the 2-point conversion when you're up 19-7. I know
always to me.
The 12, you want to go up by 14 because you don't know, but you're also thinking to yourself, we've got an elite defense that's held them from basically almost 3/4 of the game. What's to make you think that you're going to give them 2 more touchdowns, which they got 1 more and 2 field goals. So, 13 points to win. So I guess you take the points. You don't take the chance.
You don't take, to me, and this is just my own personal opinion on 2-point conversions, unless you're down big, 4th quarter, I don't want to say down big. Let's say you're down 16. It's 4th quarter. You got to go for 2 to, get that to the 2-possession game, whatever. If you're ahead, and you're ahead by basically almost 2 touchdowns, until you have to go for 2, absolutely have to go for 2, you don't go for 2. I don't like the saber or the analytics that say, oh, well, you're only up 12, you got to go for 2. No, you don't have to go for 2. You go up by 13. Play the odds.
Does that going for 2 actually feel like that's against what Kirk normally does? It does to me. Normally, Kirk just says get the extra point and call it good.
He's gone for 2 a lot more lately than he has over the last 3 or 4 years than he had before.
Yeah,
so
I don't know. He'll learn from this, I guess.
To me, and we talked about this before we came on. To me, the turning point was, and I don't want to say turning point of the game because, it was, but in a different manner, a turning point was where I saw things flip, the script get flipped on Iowa, where I think it felt like Tim Lester had full reign of everything going on the offense. And then a certain thing happened, and then I feel like he got it taken away from him. First possession of the second half, rollback pass where he threw that interception that was back across the body, basically. I feel like at that point in time, Kirk said, nope, you've had your fun. I'm taking over. We're a risk-adverse team. We don't do this stuff. And had that not happened, in my opinion, and Iowa still plays loose like they've been playing, it's a completely different result. Because I think you went back into the Brian Ferentz shell of an offense that played right into Iowa State's hands. They're stacking the box, daring you to throw. You're not going to do it. And when you do, you're doing it on downs where you have to throw, so they know it.
Right.
And so you've basically taken and played right into their game plan, what they wanted you to do. You've done what they wanted you to do. And that play, that single one play, was the complete turning point of how the game was coached.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the things, too, that I think that Iowa didn't take advantage of is the fact that Iowa State was down to their basically freshman tight end, or not tight end, but linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
They were so decimated on the linebacker core that Iowa should have been taking advantage of that with either tight end crossing routes, something that exploits
seam patterns,
the linebackers. Anything. So what Iowa State was doing was they were running a lot of 4-2-5s and then dropping a safety in or two to back up the run, but then also seeing, hey, if it's a pass, then we can still stay out here and defend the pass. So what you needed to do at that point was a lot of play actions where it brought them in, go over the top. Or if they stayed back, run crossing tight end routes, hit the tight end for 6, 7, 8 yards. You got to get them out of the mindset that I was just going to run the ball from here on out because they've got the lead. Everybody knows tendencies. Iowa State has looked at Iowa's tendencies over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and they've got them all on charts. They know what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. They know the tendencies. Hey, you've got a new coordinator. You might break a few tendencies, but you're still going to be the same Kirk Ferentz offense that you've always been. And so when it comes down to third down and 3, tendency tells me 90% of the time you're running the football. So I'm going to send my guys and play the odds. And that's what they did.
And you couldn't beat them at it.
And exactly. I
hate to say it because I am a like you. I cannot stand Iowa State. Matt Campbell outcoached him.
Yeah,
yesterday.
Agree. They have a better quarterback. They have a better wide receiver core because they have a better quarterback.
That's
probably
the only thing they had that was better. I mean, if we're being honest,
good kicker.
The better team did not win. But on that day, they were the better team because they were better coached.
They had more points.
And again, I feel like, from a team standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, they were not the better team. We've got a better defense. They've got better skill position players on the outside than we do, but we have better running backs.
Okay, so where do we go from here? For all the people that are wanting a change, I purposefully stayed away from social media as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at 0 YouTube call-in shows or instant reaction shows or whatever you want to call it. I didn't look at anything. You don't have to watch them. I didn't look at any of them.
You know what they're going to say.
Exactly. I wanted to be able to formulate my opinion without having any outside distractions or influence on me.
Mm-hmm.
We have got to change. Kirk has got to change his philosophy on games when they have the lead. He has proven, although last year's kind of an outlier a little bit, that you have to continue to play what got you to the position that you were in. If you were up 19-7, you have to continue to play exactly how you got 19 points. You can't just stop playing and then rely on eating clock and changing the style of the way you're playing. You can't do that. That he has gotten beat on that a few times when he shouldn't have.
If you want to do that, you need to do it at the right time. You need to be up by more than 16. You need to have a 3-possession lead.
And you need to do it late.
You can't do it starting, 3 minutes into the third quarter.
Oh,
You've got to do it. You're talking, you can, if you've got a 3-possession lead, let's say you're up 17 in 8 minutes, 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Okay, yeah, I can see you going a little bit more conservative, not, running the ball, playing that, take the time off the clock, three plays and punt, but you've killed 2.5 minutes off the clock, Okay, but then if they go down and they score immediately, then you got to put your foot back down again. You've got to go back to what got you there.
Yeah, but it's like when you take your foot off the pedal, putting it back on, you just don't snap your fingers like that. When you've already told the kids, or maybe not face to face, but the way you're calling the plays, you're basically sending them a message that we think our defense is going to hold them out. So we're just going to play this game out conservatively and just run the ball and not try to win it, but try not to lose it. And I've said that a couple times, and I don't know that that's any more true than it could be. But you can't. I can understand it if you're late in the game, your defense has dominated them from the minute that the game started, and you're up 17-0 or 20-3. I get it. Then you can maybe just salt the game away. That's fine. But the second they come down and start showing life, like you said, you got to put your foot back. But by then, maybe it's too late. Maybe your offense has already decided, well, we've already got this game won. And so, you can't just mentally or physically just flip that switch sometimes. Sometimes you can. It just depends on how well you are dominating your opponent on offense versus their defense. If you get them tired, you may be able to flip that switch back on. But if you're up against a good team or a decent defense, maybe not necessarily like Iowa State, but like, let's say, Ohio State, you're not going to be able to do that. You have to. I know this is tough because Kirk loves to do this. You have to play the game out, the whole game, until the very end, the way you started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what people are upset about or disappointed about, is that you don't have
the killer instinct.
You don't. You don't know. I don't know if it's a situation where he just doesn't want to show up the other team.
I think that's a lot of it.
Or he doesn't, it's an honor thing, but you can't be doing that. You just lost a game because you sat on the ball.
I think you're right. I think he is of old school mentality of, you don't show up your opponent, you don't rub it in, because what comes around goes around eventually, and they're going to do the thing to you, and you don't want that. Okay, well, I could have beat you by 50, but I decided to beat you by 30. So when push comes to shove, in this day and age, that doesn't work very well, because the style points matter for playoff positioning, all that stuff. So you can't really have that old school mentality. You have to be more of that. I kind of think of it more of that Gen Z versus Gen X type of thing. Gen X is more laid back. Gen Z is more hyper. Are we wiser? Yeah, probably. But they're more ambitious than we are at this point, because we're just ready to be done. And I think that's kind of where he's at now. It's just like, I'm old school. This is how I've always done it. I'm not going to change my ways. And damned if you're going to ever tell me to do it differently.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this too, before we get too far into the game and what's coming up for us. We'll get to that in a minute. But at any point, did you feel like yesterday, maybe we should run Brendan Sullivan out there and let him have a couple series. Did you think that at any point? I didn't.
I never did. No, not really.
But would it have been advantageous at the end of the game, though, to have had him in and let Iowa State see what he can do? And then have him out at the end of the game where they have that running thought process that they have to say, this guy's capable of running. We really need to keep an eye on him because he could just turn and take off and go to the left or to the right and make the edge. Yeah. Then I think at that point, then their defense might be a little more strung out and a little more, hey, we got to watch out for this because this guy has already gone off on us once. And this may be why he comes back in to go off on us again. We maybe need to space out a little bit instead of crowding that line of scrimmage. Those are things that like you said last week, it's a chess match. You set things up early to make things happen later. And I think that's something that Kirk should have thought about. And I know we're 2020 that, you can look at things now and say, oh, I know exactly what we should have done, blah, blah, blah. Well, at the time of the game, you don't see those things. It's, hindsight being 2020, but.
Well, we watched the game together. How many times in those scramble situations or rollouts did Cade have room to run to make yardage, but I don't think he trusts himself yet or doesn't feel that he's capable of doing it, whereas maybe a Brendan Sullivan could have.
Exactly.
That's, again, like you said, hindsight's 2020. You can't really go back and say, well, if Sullivan was in there, this would have happened. Well, no, we don't know that.
Right.
But, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think, going back to the game itself, though, there's a couple other things that really stood out. First and goal at the 1, and you get a field goal. First and goal at the 3, and you get a field goal. Those two possessions killed us, too.
Yeah.
Because in old school Kirk Ferentz, and this might be a situation where Tim Lester having the reins is a little bit of a detriment to us. Old school Kirk Ferentz at first and goal at the 1, it'd have been a quarterback sneak 3 straight times. And I don't think you're going to stop 3 straight quarterback sneaks from getting in 1 yard. I mean,
at that point,
I just don't see it.
You're saying, hey, offensive line, you're a senior dominated
3 foot. That's
veteran,
all I need, 3 feet.
Get me 3 feet, and you should be able to do it. And if you're not going to do it on the first one, I'll give you the second time to do it. If you can't get it on 2, I'll give you the third time to do it.
Well, think about it.
I'm going to send confidence to you. I'm confident that you can do this.
Go back to 2019 when, the whole world wanted him to run another sneak on third or second down or third down or whatever it was, a 1 yard line, and end up rolling out and hitting that tight end. But, they ran 3 straight sneaks and gotten like 12 yards down to the 1.
No.
It's like
a different quarterback too. That Stanley was healthy and he had 2 good knees. And
Nate Stanley.
Yeah.
I
say Stanley.
And I get Stanley. That. But still, I mean, if you've got a guy who's supposed to be healthy, you're going to trust that he can get you a yard.
And he did it later in the game.
Yeah.
So why were we so hesitant to do it for a touchdown?
And those are two possessions that
would have won us the game, honestly.
Either one of them would have won you the game.
And then the one where they had the ball in the one of those 2 possessions, and Jacob Gill ran out to the left and was wide open, and he didn't hit him. But he was only open for about 3 seconds before the defender realized he was that wide open and ran over and covered him. So if he'd have thrown that ball or had the vision to see him being open, we're not even talking about. We're talking about a win and going on to Troy at 3-0 or 2-0.
Talking about a win that was probably very comfortable at that point because you probably destroyed their will to live at that point. You're not going to, no, they're not going to give up, but the odds are stacked against them and they're probably playing the game out just to get it over with. But if some nuts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, right?
Right. I know there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to fire Ferentz. Am I there yet? No. Could I be very easily pushed into that position? Very easily, yes. But right now, I'm not going to. There's a lot to play for. Let's see how the team rebounds. Let's everybody back off the edge of the cliff. We're not ready to jump yet. We'll see if we run the table into the Big Ten, except for Ohio State, and I don't think there's a chance really, well, there's a chance. There's always a chance that we beat Ohio State. They could suffer injuries between now and the time that Iowa plays them, and they could be having problems. And Iowa could
just
really
play
start
out of our
going up.
minds like we did in 2017.
But what we need to do is we need to start giving. We need to stop saying, "I'm not going to hurt this guy's ego by putting somebody else in there." This should always be every day. This should be a competition for everybody's spot. The best player plays, period. So if Brendan Sullivan is playing better than Cade McNamara, I don't care about Cade's ego. I don't care about his NIL deal. And we've talked about this in the past. You got to play the player that will give you the best chance to score points and win this game. If it's Cade, so be it. But you have to give Sullivan his opportunity. If he's running the offense and he's doing a good job, give him some plays. Reward him. Give Cade the time to step back, maybe look at the game and say, I need to just start over. I need to reset.
He needs to see it from somebody else's perspective too. Yeah.
And then if God forbid something would happen to one of the quarterbacks, if it's Cade, he gets hurt again. And now you're looking over at Sullivan. Sullivan's sitting on the bench in the street clothes going, I never get to play. So I decided, at the end of the game, it was so much quicker for me just to throw on, my coat and go, because he never plays. You have to play the kid. You do. You have to play him.
Yeah. And I honestly thought at this point, we talked about it before the first game. I said, I can see special package situations where he's going to get series in there in the first game, in the second game where, Cade's going to get the first three. He's going to come in for a series. People have done it before.
Yeah.
That's not going to hurt to do that.
No.
You've done it before. You did it in 2001 with Kyle McCann and Brad Banks. And you built Brad Banks up for that 2002 campaign, but by doing that,
And if McNamara's ego is so fragile that even mentioning playing someone else throws him into a tantrum, then maybe that's too bad, and you need to just do it anyway, and he'll get over it. Yeah. I mean, he didn't set the world on fire in that second half. He had 6 yards of total passing and 6 yards. I think that's what I saw, 6 yards of passing in the second half. That's putrid. That's horrible. That's worse than Deacon Hill last year.
Yeah.
That's
if you're a
13
team player,
of 29 for 99 yards in a whole game, that's horrible.
If you're a team player, you step back and you say that too. Hey, somebody else needs to give a shot. Whatever. I've not got it today. Whatever.
Right.
A competitor doesn't want to say that, but
no.
Somebody who's team oriented will say that. Will say, "Hey, look, I'm not having a good day. Get somebody else a chance. Let me, or at least put him in for a couple series. Let me clear my head. Let me get, let me talk to, sideline guys. Let's look at plays. Let's look at stuff that I missed. Give me a chance to reset where I'm at."
Yeah.
But I'm not a competitor's not going to say, pull me out of the game.
No.
Nobody ever wants to be pulled out. I get that. But, sometimes you just gotta put your ego aside, or you gotta put your own self-interest aside for the good of the other 84 people that are on scholarship and the other 104 people that are on the sidelines, so, and maybe they did. And Kirk was like, no, I'm not doing that. We don't know. I'm guessing that probably didn't happen, but we don't know.
What I don't like about this whole thing is that you hired an offensive coordinator, and you obviously had enough confidence in him to, one, hire him, and two, pay him money to be your offensive coordinator under your regime, because you feel like he's on the same page you are. And he's the one that knows basically a brand new offense. Kirk's never run this offense before. I mean, there's plays that coincide with the same thing that he had before, but why would you just micromanage and take away from him and say, nope, we're not doing that, like you said earlier? And I 100% feel like this is what actually happened, is what you said, is that when Iowa threw that first interception, Kirk says, I'm taking the reins back. I've got this. We're just going to finish this game out just like we started every game, or finished every game last year. Play defense and let the chips fall where they may. Well, guess what? The chips fell on the wrong side, bud.
Yep.
So, he needs to learn. He needs to adapt. Does Kirk adapt and learn? Well, he might learn, but he doesn't adapt.
No.
I
I think
don't think
there's
he
a little bit
does.
of that, I think there's a little bit of that ego there that says, this is my ship. I'm the captain of this ship. I will run it the way I want to run it. I will drive it how I want to drive it. And as much as it pains me to say, he's every right to do that because that's what he's getting paid to do. Is it right? No. Has he done well for the university over the last 25 years? Absolutely.
Of course he has. I don't think that's
anybody
a question.
Anybody that says different is just looking for reasons to not like the guy.
Right.
Whatever. You don't have to like him. You respect what he's done with a team that isn't loaded with 5-star talent, isn't loaded with a ton of money to buy players like all these other teams are doing. You're building it the right way. You're taking guys, you're developing them. You're going to have bumps in the road. If you're hinging the entire season on, oh my God, it's playoffs or bust. I get it. National championship is the ultimate goal. Getting into playoffs is the ultimate goal. But it's still not a dead season at Iowa if you don't make the playoffs. Think about the fact of how long the playoffs have been in play. How many teams have actually made it? A dozen? 133 Division I teams and maybe a dozen teams have made it over the course of those years. The odds of you getting in are a lot tougher than you think. And yeah, sometimes you can be 13-0 and still get left out. Florida State last year.
Well,
so
things have changed.
It's a beauty pageant. I mean, that's what it was. It was a 14 beauty pageant. Who did the media like the most? Whatever. But if you're hinging your life on whether they, the season's over because they don't have a chance of making the playoffs, then stop watching because it's an entertainment business and they're still entertaining me, even if they don't make a national championship game. Would I love to see a national championship? Absolutely.
Of course.
Was I disappointed that the Iowa women lost 2 years in a row? Absolutely. Was I happy that they made it?
Yep.
Absolutely. Was I proud of the team? Darn right. And did I watch them every single game? Absolutely. And I didn't change my fandom based on the fact that, well, they lost this game, so they're done. I'm not going to root for them anymore. Well, if you're going to do that, go to hell. Get out of here. We don't need you on this fan base. I don't need to hear you. That's the way I look at it. I'm still going to enjoy it. Disappointed, but still enjoy it.
I think some of the disappointment from the fan base is coming from the fact that you brought in a new offensive coordinator. You expected that things would be better. You expected that they would score points. They did the first game, but you got to look at the opponent. They're not Iowa State. Mm-hmm. So you expected that would carry over. But I think what they're thinking is, and I'm thinking it too a little bit to some degree, is you've got an all-time defense, maybe an all-time defense, where these guys came back. Castro, Higgins, Jackson, they all came back for this year. And you're thinking to yourself, this might be the best defense Iowa's ever had. Okay? And now we wasted. We lost, well, of course, one game doesn't make a season, obviously. But you feel like that was a game that you really could have won. I mean, it's not Ohio State you just lost to. I get it. Ohio State, if we lose to Ohio State, just like we lost to Iowa State, I have no problems with anything. I'm fine with it. I know they have superior talent. And I know they have a 15 times more NIL money than Iowa does. Maybe more. But this wasn't Ohio State. This is Iowa State.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing to think about, though. You lost to an Iowa State team that'll probably end up 9-3 based on a weak Big 12.
Well, we'll see.
And they will probably be ranked in the top 20. So is it a horrible loss? State-wise, passion-wise, from bragging rights-wise, yeah, it's a horrible loss. Is it a horrible loss in the eyes of where you could be ranked at the end of the year? Probably not as bad as you think it's going to be. It hurts right now. Yeah, absolutely hurts right now. Sucks. The last thing I want to have to listen to is a bunch of cry clowns bragging about, oh, it's a cyclone state. No, it's not. It'll never be a cyclone state. Sorry. It's little brother, go back in your shell. When you come back and you haven't lost twice as many games as we've won against you, then say something. Right now, your win percentage is 33%, so shut up. Yeah, you won this one. You won one 2 years ago on a game that you shouldn't have won. You've won 2 games in the last 10 years that you shouldn't have won, that you got pretty lucky to win, that's not bragging rights. Now, granted, yeah, there's a few games Iowa's had pretty lucky to win in there. The difference between an Iowa fan and an Iowa State fan is Iowa fans aren't going around telling Iowa State how bad they suck and how great Iowa is. They're just moving on.
Right.
It's not a bragging rights thing for us. It's more of a, thank God that game's over. Let's get on to the regular season.
Something too that we as a fan base need to kind of keep, if we still have aspirations for the playoff, we need to look at what's going on outside of Iowa. We need to look at what did Notre Dame do last night?
Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois at home.
Okay, so basically what I'm getting at is there is a lot of parity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of parity in college football. Granted, there will be probably Georgia or Ohio State or somebody that Texas maybe.
Alabama.
I don't know. Somebody's going to be probably 13-0 or 12-0 or 13-0 at the end of the season after their championship game. But where's that second tier going to be? Is that going to be everybody's going to be 10-2? I mean, I don't mean everybody. I mean, like the second and third set of teams, the second and third team of, let's say, the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC. Where are those teams? Are those teams going to be 10-2? I think maybe 11-1. We need to look at the end of the season and decide, if Iowa would finish 10-2, win out except Ohio State, is 10-2 equal to what everybody else is doing that's not on that upper tier? And there's 12 spots. Do you think that a 10-2 Iowa who has lost one game in the Big Ten worthy of a 12 person or 12 spot, one of those 12 spots? You have to look at everybody else. You have to look at, what did Tennessee do in the SEC? What did Texas A&M do? What did Oklahoma, Texas do? What did Georgia do? You have to look at the second tier and say, are we equal to them? Maybe record-wise we are. Maybe talent-wise we aren't. What's the matrix involved with selecting non-champions of the leagues? Is it strength of schedule? Is it like a head-to-head type of thing if they have never played each other? Is it a common opponents type of thing? Is it a point scored type of thing? Is it a defensive ratio of some sort? Or is it just flat out, hey, I think this team should make it and that team shouldn't? And that becomes the human factor.
That's what it is.
And I don't think that's what it is either. But that's what it was last year.
Oh, yeah. Well, and here's the other thing. We talked about it before. Iowa loses to Iowa State. Iowa loses to Ohio State. Those are the only two losses, right? Ohio State wins the Big Ten. Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. Maybe they finish 9-3 or 9-4 because of they're in the Big 12 championship and they lose that game. Okay, well, they're 9-4. They're not going to get in. No, I'm not saying that. But does that make Iowa look better? Because that loss was 1 point at home early in the season against a team that finished runner-up in the conference.
Well,
and their only other loss was to a conference champion.
I hate to say this, but we need to be Iowa State fans from here on out. And I hate to say this, and I'm not going to root for them. I will not root for them.
I will not either.
But I will not be upset if they go ahead and win, because that will help Iowa eventually. Now, if Iowa goes out and loses to Minnesota and also loses to Ohio State and loses to Wisconsin, that deal's off. I'm going to root against Iowa State every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm only going to root for Iowa State, or not really root for them. I'm only going to kind of hope that they win so that it helps Iowa. Not of any other reason, period. End of story.
Well, let's say we flush this. We've talked about this ad nauseum, I think. And let's flush this game. Let's move on. Sun came up today. The guys are back in the building, working hard, figure out what they did, what they need to figure out. Move on to Troy. I've got some thoughts on that. We'll just, I'll let you go ahead and do your analysis of Troy, because I know you've done some of that.
Yep. Troy University is in Troy, Alabama. They are part of the Sun Belt Conference. They are introducing this year a brand new head coach. His name is Jared Parker. He's in his first season. They've played 2 games, lost to Nevada 28-26 and lost to Memphis 38-17. Both were on the road, I think. I'd have to look that one up. They have a student population of 14,679. They have run 2 quarterbacks out there this season. The one guy that's probably the starter, his name is Goose Crowder. He's 25 of 37 for 237, and he's at a 67.6% completion percentage. They have a backup quarterback named of Matthew Caldwell. He is 11 of 19 for 113 yards and a 57.9 or 58% completion percentage. So he will play some. Running back Damian Taylor, 18 carries, 136 yards. He's got a 7.6 yard per carry average. He's got 1 TD. They also have another running back named of Gerald Green, 21 carries, 60 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. So he's kind of like their apparently short yardage down back type person that you just basically hand it to him and hope he gets the first down. Receivers, they've got 2 receivers that have caught 10 passes and 11 passes respectively. Devontae Ross, 10 receptions, 129 yards for a 12.9 yard average, 1 TD. Peyton Higgins, 11 receptions for 91 yards, no TDs. And their linebacker, Brendan Jackson, is their tackles leader at 16 total tackles on the season. Now, their kicker is 4 for 4 in extra points and 3 for 3 in field goals, so he's perfect on the season. But his longest field goal is 30 yards. So he's not really been tested, so to speak, on field goals yet. They don't have an interception all year. The team, nobody has an interception. And their punter, Robert Cole, has had 8 punts for a 42.3 yard average and a 59 yard long. So the kicking game seems decent for Troy. Mm-hmm. Is this something that I think Iowa should be able to win? Absolutely. And I'd be shocked if they don't. And they should be upset and get things right this week. This may be a game where Iowa can work on some things to some degree. I don't think this is the Troy that we've heard about in the past that everybody was scared of and that they've always given people fits. I think this is a team that just is a new coach, and I think they're still trying to figure things out a little bit. So they're, Memphis 38-17, and they took care of business pretty good. I think Iowa is better than Memphis, although I don't think I'd want to play them right now. That's really about the most I really have on Troy. There's not a lot to them, but it is Troy University. It's not University of Troy. So let people say Trojans. That thing correctly. But what do you got on Troy? What are you thinking about this game?
I honestly, I think that after the disappointment of yesterday and how they let that game slip away, I think it's going to be I would not want to be the team coming in here next week. That's the way I look at it, especially from the defensive standpoint. I think the defense is going to be chomping at the bit to get back out there to prove some things, and I think the offense will be better. Again, you've got a whole new offense. Not making excuses here, but you've got a whole new offense. This was the second time against a defense that you haven't seen. Okay? There's going to be times where it looks world beater, and there's times when it's going to look like Brian Ferentz's offense and couldn't move the ball on a high school team. And a lot of that is timing. It's lack of repetition. It's lack of awareness or playing, offensive lineman takes the wrong step. The hole's not there. We've talked about it how many times now that the one thing we see is the lack of respect for a passing game causes the defensive end on the weak side to crash down every single play and run down the back from behind. If that situation can get remedied, it opens up so many more holes for the running back, because now the running back has more time to search for that crease to get through. Okay, so that's going to make the offense better. So that's going to come with preparation. That's going to come from game film, seeing that happening. Now they've seen, okay, 2 weeks in a row, this is what they're doing. If they're smart coaches, which they're getting paid a lot more than I am, and I see it. And if they can see that, they say, okay, we need to do something, whether that's bring the tight end from the strong side to the weak side in motion to cover that. Whatever. They're going to make those adjustments. They should be. So I think that'll get taken care of over the course of the year. But again, if you are expecting Iowa to go out there and put up Texas Tech numbers, you're you are following the wrong team. That was never going to happen regardless of who the offensive coordinator is and regardless of how well they grasp the system to start with. You could bring in the best, the Bill Walsh offense from when nobody had seen it. And it's going to take some time. So give it some time. Don't give up on it. Now, yeah, I will go to my grave saying that I think Kirk took over after that interception, like we talked about, and that was not Tim Lester's play calling. There were some things that I thought that he ran that had some very Brian Ferentz-esque looks to him, like, why are you running that in this situation? The first and goal at the 3 and you run a reverse. That just plow the ball right up the middle. Just run at the teeth of them. You're going to get 3 yards in 3 plays. If you can't get 3 yards in 3 plays, then you don't deserve to score. So that's what I think. I think Iowa is going to put their foot on their neck and strangle them pretty early. I don't think it's going to be similar to to me, I feel it's going to be similar like Middle Tennessee from 2019. Maybe not quite to that extent on yardage, but I think score-wise it'll be like Illinois State, 40-0, 40-3, 41-3, something like that. I don't foresee Troy doing a whole lot.
Okay, so an 0-2 Troy coming into Iowa City. What do you want to see? What do you want to see from Iowa? What is something you'd like to see?
I want to see the offense win the game, not the defense having to hold them to win a game. Now, yeah, the defense can do their part and hold them, on their side of the 50 most of the game. But I want to see the offense moving the ball. I want to see a consistency of that. I want to see, what we saw in the first quarter, more of that motion. We saw less motion as the game went on. We talked about it when we were sitting there watching. I said, oh yeah, we definitely see a lot more of the motion, especially in this first quarter. Every play, there's 3 guys moving out. Yeah, I think we saw maybe half a dozen plays after that when in the second half where they actually ran motion like that. That wasn't normal motion, like we would normally see. It honestly felt like we brought back in the Brian Ferentz offense, which is play not to lose because you got to lead now. Just run the ball, do what you have to take time off the clock, and let's rely on our defense.
Well, yeah, all those things. I want to see completed passes. I want to see the basic completed passes that you expect almost anyone to be able to throw. I want to see those. I don't want to see him throwing into double coverage. And I'd like to see Sullivan play.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just let the kid play. I'd like to see him get some plays in the first half.
Yeah, give him a series in the first half or 2 series in the first half.
Give Cade a chance to come out and look at the game, and if he's frustrated or flustered, hey, let's look at it from the sidelines. Let's get on our little iPads and look at it from above if that's what we have to do to see what we're seeing here. What are they doing differently? What's bothering you about
was it a misread or was it a bad, somebody missed assignment somewhere? That's stuff you can see on the sidelines if you've got the time to do it.
You may be benefiting both players by doing that. Mm-hmm. You're giving Sullivan the opportunity to get some live reps in an actual situation that means something and letting him have a series, whether it be 3 downs and punt or whether it be 8, 10, whatever. Let him run it for a series or 2, maybe not consecutive series, or maybe you could, depending on how far up you are at that point. But then you're also giving Cade the option of, like we just talked about, seeing things from a distance, watching what the defense is doing, and then thinking mentally what I need to do to adjust to what they're doing so that I can be successful. Sometimes when you're in the heat of the game like that, you're not seeing everything the way you should. Well, then you go to the sidelines at the end of the series and you sit down at an iPad and you can do that. But I don't think you get the full picture unless you're watching the offense that you run being run without you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not the way it is.
I don't think that's wrong. I mean,
I know that when I played college baseball, especially if I was pitching the second game of a doubleheader, my attention was on how the pitcher that pitched before me on our team is pitching to the opposing team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching, is he this certain I'm charting pitches and I'm watching what batters are doing what, and I know mentally making notes in my head, because back in college I don't have the analytics that they have in the MLB right now. I don't have those things. But I'm watching and I'm thinking to myself, their number 4 batter swings out of his rear end, so I can throw a high fastball past him every time. He's never going to catch up to that. Or such and such 8th batter can't hit a curve to save his life. Those are things I'm seeing, that if I'm out there on the first go around, I'm the number 1 pitcher the first time, the first game.
You don't get to see.
I don't get to see that thing. I don't get to see that guy. I have to figure that out on my own. It might take me, I might throw a curve on the second or third pitch if he's fouled one off and he's dead set on a fastball. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I need to throw a curve. And he's out there so far out in front of his own hands, he can't even begin to touch it. And I'm like, okay, I've got this guy. I know he can adjust to me, but I'm also going to adjust to him. So these are the things that, as an athlete, these are the things that you look at, that you can't necessarily always see it while you're doing it
live. Right.
So, take a step back, watch what's happening, adjust in your mind, and understand how things are going. And I don't want to beat this like a dead horse, and I currently am doing that, but I just want to see Sullivan play, because down the line, if something happens to Cade and Sullivan hasn't had any opportunity to play all year, he's not going to look good. He's not going to have the motion's going to be different. The timing's going to be off. But if he's had a chance to run with the number 1s, maybe that timing won't be off as bad, or maybe he can catch up to it quicker and not look terrible for an entire game until the next game when he's had a full week to look at to be on the number 1s. Right. Like Vandenberg did when Northwestern knocked out Stanzi. And then he didn't look good the rest of all that game. But then the next game against Ohio State, he looked great.
Yeah. And then
don't let that get to that point. You'd think you'd learn from that. I think the kid's a serviceable enough quarterback. He's not a Deacon Hill. He's better than that.
No.
And he certainly knows more about running an offense than, let's say, and it's not Marco's fault, because he's never had the opportunity to run Iowa's offense other than for 8 plays in a bowl game blowout. Not an accurate representation of what things could be like. I just don't understand why you wouldn't give the boy an opportunity, give the kid an opportunity to play. I think it only helps you in the long run.
Yeah. And the only reason or only logical thing is if you're stubborn. If you don't want to, is it a situation, and I'm just speculating, I'm not saying that this is how it is, but what if it's a situation where you've thrown a guy out there who is your guy, and the other guy goes out and lights up the world? Now you've got to admit that you made a mistake.
Yeah, you've got a controversy in your hands, and you've got to answer that question about who should start the next game in your press conference, and you don't want to answer that question. Well, you know what? You got to pull up your big boy pants and answer the question.
Yep.
You're getting paid $6, $7, $8 million, whatever it is. Kirk's getting paid. I don't even keep up with it anymore. A lot of money. I know that. These are the questions that, if they're asked, hey, answer them.
As a coach, you've got to say, I'm not infallible. I make mistakes.
Right.
I'll give you a real world example. We were playing in an all-star tournament. I was coaching all-star kids. They had their best batter come up. I walked him intentionally to load the bases with 2 outs. And the next guy got up and hit a bases clearing double.
Yeah.
I made the mistake. I should have just, taken the chance and pitched against him, but I didn't. I played the odds. It didn't work out for me. And I was the first one to say, yep, I screwed that up. Be man enough to admit it. That's the thing. I don't know if that's the case. I'm hoping that's not the situation, but it could be. But anyway.
Okay, so what's your prediction for the weekend with Troy University?
I'm going to say they're going to get. We're going to win 38-6.
That's pretty close to what I was thinking too. I was thinking maybe 40-3. Because I think that defense is going to be they're going to have a chip on their shoulder after giving up 20 points in the second half.
It could be a shutout too.
And it could very well be a shutout. I think they're going to be a little bit refocused. I think they're going to be a little angry at some points. They're going to come in with focused eyes, and they're going to be anxious to get that taste out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree. So
okay,
all right. Want to do a question of the week for next
question
week?
of the week. I actually thought of this question myself. Kudos to me. When was the last time Iowa played Troy in football, and what was the score?
Interesting.
That's your question.
Okay.
I'm not going to give hints.
People.
I'm not going to give anything that even could remotely give away the answer. It's up to you guys to figure it out.
Throw it in the comments
like always, try not to Google it, but it's fine.
Yeah. Well, when you have your answer, throw it in the comments here on YouTube. Put it on our other social media on Facebook. We'll have that question out there. Like and subscribe to this channel if you like the content here, like this video. Just give us a thumbs up, whatever. Throw any comments you like on here. Tell us, whether you agree with us or you disagree with us on our thoughts on this last week's game. And I'm never going to tell somebody who disagrees with me that they're wrong either, because everybody's opinion is valid, and I don't expect everybody to agree with what I say. And quite honestly, I would be disappointed if everybody did agree with what I said. So give us your thoughts, what you think. If you agree, disagree, throw them in the comments. Just give us a shout back. Like I said, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Tell your friends about us. Get some people. Let's get some subscribers on here. I'd like to get to. Right now we're at 19. I'd like to get us up to 30 by mid-season at least. That would be a good goal to have. So
yeah, tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
And everybody can just calm down for a little bit, reassess
Step
things.
back from the ledge.
The season's not over. There's a lot to play for. There's still an outside chance at the playoff, depending on what everybody else does. Let's focus our attention on the next game and not worry about what happened yesterday or the week before, whenever you're looking at this. Just let's, like we're talking about the team, let's refocus.
Flush it, move on.
Flush it. We got games ahead. Let's look forward, not look back.
I agree. So yeah, let's hope we jump on here next week. We should have a guest with us next week to help us break down the game against Troy and preview the upcoming game against Minnesota.
Yep.
Start of the Big Ten season at Minneapolis. That's something exciting to look forward to. A chance for me to actually get on live with somebody instead of on somebody else's podcast where I'm sitting in a hotel room trying to digest some food that wasn't very good. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and I'll say week sucked.
Go Hawks.
But go Hawks.
Yeah.